Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the 6-5 Podcast Insider Edition. I'm your host today, Daniel Newman, joined by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Patrick Moorhead. Patrick, good day to you.
Daniel, how you doing? Looks like does not look like you're in the office today, out traveling, obviously.
I'm out traveling. I'm in one of those handsome hotel rooms, those ones that you really want to brag about, so you do a video just to make sure the whole world sees them. But no, in all seriousness, Pat, this is the world we live in. Mobility's picking up a little bit. And while we are still hearing a lot about what's going on with the virus, caution is necessary. It is good to get on the road. It's been good to get in front of some people, have some dinners carefully, of course. But it's been really great. Pat, listen, I'm so excited. This show, we've got a returning guest, Mick Hollison of Cloudera. He's the president and CMO. And hold off on just a minute before I introduce him. But for everybody out there, the 6-5 Insider is our partner podcast for the 6-5 series, which you probably watch every Friday, usually every Friday, because that's how we roll. But if you don't, the whole theme of the show is in the Insiders to bring on some of the world's most influential high-tech leaders and get inside the company, learn a little bit about their business, and of course share some views that hopefully inform you. Lots of analysis, a little bit of news. And so before I introduce, just one last little thing, Pat. Disclaimer, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we are talking to and about companies that are sometimes publicly traded, in Cloudera's case, used to be publicly traded, we just want to make sure everybody knows nothing that we are going to say on this show is intended to be investment advice. So, Pat, you want to bring Mick in?
Let's do that. Hey, Mick, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Nice to be with both of you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on again. It's always a great conversation, and the great part about it is that we're talking about something that is near and dear to all of our hearts. I remember about 10 years ago when I was talking about the hybrid cloud, people thought I was crazy. They thought I was a public cloud denier. But here we are, Mick and Daniel, probably for the 50th time that we've all explained this to somebody. But now we're explaining it to our audience, and more specifically, what Cloudera is doing in there. But maybe before we jump into that, Mick, you have thousands of customers, Fortune 1000 customers, but maybe start off with maybe the elevator pitch on what Cloudera does.
Yeah, we've got a pretty simple mission at Cloudera, and it's to make data and analytics easy for everyone. But the truth is that the customers that need this the most, that need the most help with their data and analytics strategy, are some of the biggest companies in the world that have some of the most challenging data and analytics problems. And Cloudera's solution's uniquely suited to their needs. If you happen to be a company that's highly regulated, you've got a lot of things to stay compliant with in the way that you access data, then we're a perfect solution for you. If you've got a ton of data that you need to address, then we're a really good solution for you. So whether you're trying to, solve for the human genome, or you're just trying to search for something on your smartphone, we're likely behind it somewhere, whether or not we're very visible or not.
Yeah, the company's done well, went through a pretty big transition this year, as I mentioned in the beginning, from being publicly traded to being taken private in a what I believe was a very successful transaction, bringing Cloudera back. And maybe you can talk about that a little bit when we talk about progress here. Now, I wanted to say two things, though. One is I've always loved the name of your company, Cloudera. Great name. I also think that because the name is what it is, you always have to answer the question that Pat just asked you, because it could be so many different things. Also, having said that, when you say the impact that data can have and how these large enterprises, I've had the opportunity the last 2 years to be a judge on your Cloudera Cloud Impact Awards. And I can tell you, having read many of the extensive applications and how these companies have used your tools to, in banking and healthcare and in different industries, you really are a technology that takes companies forward into the future. So maybe, just it's kind of building on the little bit of the background of why customers need you, though, Mick, talk a little bit just about the progress and really kind of, as I mentioned, since taking the company back private.
Yeah, so exciting news, as you mentioned. We announced taking the company private back on June the 1st. We made it official and closed the transaction on October the 8th. So we're all now officially on board. As I shared with both of you just before we started the call, we had our first ever board meeting just last week in Atlanta and had the opportunity to get together. And the great news about that was we were able to share not only steady but accelerating progress in what we're doing as a business. So yes, we're hitting our top line revenue objectives and that sort of thing, but probably the more important fact for people to take away from this is that we're hitting all of our targets to migrate our customers to our new platform, the Cloudera Data Platform. So by the end of this fiscal year for us, which is the end of January, we'll have about half of our entire customer base will have begun their migration to CDP, and about a quarter of our ARR will be on CDP at that point in time. So these are some of the kind of metrics that I'm excited to get to share now that we are a privately held company, and they're not so difficult to share as they were as a publicly traded one. So great progress on the migration to CDP, which of course is a hybrid data platform. Back to the topic of the show here.
Gosh, that's incredible progress. I think the last time that I heard you talk about that, it was around 10%, and maybe I wasn't paying attention along the way, but that's pretty incredible progress. And I realize it's not all their data, but when you're talking about petabytes of data, you have to start somewhere. But getting the ball rolling is important. So there are many different types of cloud strategy. There's on-prem, there's colo, hybrid, public cloud only. There are positive and negatives of each. Can you take us through the pros and the cons of these different strategies?
Sure, for sure. And look, and I mentioned earlier that we're particularly strong in big companies and regulated ones. And that's because those kind of companies in particular have put a certain set of characteristics first and foremost. If I think of it like a car, and I think of how I define, hybrid, then safety has to come first. So the security and governance of the data is paramount. And particularly if you are a regulated company, a healthcare entity or a banking entity or a telecommunications or a government entity. And if that's the case, then you likely want to keep your data as close to you as you possibly can. And in many instances, that'll mean an on-prem kind of a solution. Performance is another really critical metric. And there are certain workloads, long-running workloads, that perform a little bit better and more economically on-prem. There are other workloads that work supremely well. I think of machine learning and AI type of workloads that work super well in the public cloud. So, continue with the car metaphor a little bit. Your mileage may vary. It depends on what you want to try to do and what kind of company you are as to what philosophy you're going to have as to both where your data resides and then where the workloads run. Because the wonderful thing about today's world with containerization and the separation of storage and compute is that where the data is and where the workload runs don't have to be in the same place anymore, Patrick. And that's a fantastic thing and gives a lot of optionality to customers moving forward.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. We are definitely seeing buy-in on all levels of hybrid and multi-cloud, architectures. There's no, Pat's comment earlier about, the 10 years ago and being a denier and all that stuff. But what we've really seen is it's all come true. Now, everybody's got a little different secret sauce about how they're doing it, bare metal, Kubernetes, virtualization, what the way they do it, where data resides, their edge to cloud and cloud to edge, and all I'm saying. So we have the architecture is fantastic, but pragmatically speaking, when you're when you're trying to take all this data and really extract value out of it, that's where Cloudera looks to shine. At least that's been my interpretation from having spent some time, working closely with you and just, analyzing the industry. But one of the areas that I'd really like you to kind of dig into, and you're going to know this question's coming because I've been on your briefings. I ask you this enough. Cloudera's differentiation is going to be a key to its long-term growth and success. It's going to be a key because you do have partners that are also going to become very good competitors, especially with public cloud. But basically, everybody kind of has a data story now. Everybody, the on-prems, the public clouds, and then of course you've got some SaaS companies, and they're all saying, hey, we can do this, we can do this. Cloudera believes it's got some differentiation. This is the moment. What is it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's multifaceted. So first and foremost, we believe we really have delivered on an end-to-end hybrid and multi-cloud data management solution. There are many companies out there that might be multi-cloud. There are many that might do some aspect of hybrid. There are very, very few that are able to do both successfully. And when we say hybrid, what we mean is no rewrites, like being able to write an application one time, to have it run equivalently well, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud, and data movement and application movement back and forth. We think of it as, I'll continue with my car thought here, I'm on a roll for some reason today, sort of smooth shifting, being able to move workloads where they're best suited to be run at the time that you need them to be run in the most economical way. And we think we do that better than anybody in the industry today, Patrick. And we do it across a wide range of analytic functions. There are really great vendors in data warehousing and in data engineering and in streaming of data, but very few of them really work across that entire spectrum with integrated security and safety functionality like I spoke of earlier. So the combination of our SDX technologies for integrated security across a wide range of analytics delivered in a hybrid and multi-cloud fashion is a pretty differentiated set of capabilities for Cloudera, and our customers are loving it, and that's showing in that sort of accelerated rate of migration and adoption of our new platform that I spoke of earlier with Patrick.
Yeah, you know, these I'll call them point solutions for data. They tend to have an integration tax, and you know, whether it's like you said, security, governance, lineage, automation, management, figuring this all out. Every point solution these companies are adding, there needs to be integration for the handoff to go from place to place. And it's so funny, Mick. I get on some of these calls. You know, I'm a professional who sits on briefing calls and listens to companies, and they're always putting data at the very center. They talk about the need to put all these things together. So it's pretty exciting what you brought to the table, and you've built out not only CDP private but CDP on the public side as well.
Yeah, one thing I'd jump in with there, Patrick, and you know, taxes are in the news a lot lately. I don't know if any of you have seen Elon Musk's latest musings on Twitter about who's really paying taxes and who isn't. But to your point earlier, with a lot of those point providers, the integration tax is paid for by the customer. Yeah. It's not paid for by the vendor.
Exactly.
And that's a really important thing to note. So it can get very, very spendy very quickly when you're trying to stitch together a handful of analytic functions across multiple clouds. And that's really our sweet spot. And since the industry seems to be going multi-cloud, and it seems to have lots of ongoing reasons to have workloads both on-prem and in the public cloud, we think it puts us in a pretty good position.
Yeah. So I have to ask, so we've talked about the hybrid cloud. And then, you know, people have talked about the data cloud, but your strategy is all about delivering a hybrid data cloud. Is that fancy marketing words, or is it something that's truly different from the hybrid cloud?
Well, I'm probably going to have to go with a little bit of both. Probably guilty as charged, a little bit of both. But no, in all sincerity, look, the word hybrid in front of data cloud is very, very important from our perspective, because it of course applies to the platform elements itself, Patrick, meaning you can have your data or have your workloads reside either on premises or in the public cloud. You can move data and workloads back and forth between them. Of course, it references that, but hybrid references more than that from our perspective. Hybrid references the actual analytic functions themselves meaning that you can deal with both data that's at rest and data that's in motion in the same platform. That we also consider equivalently hybrid, if you will. And it's unique capability that Cloudera again brings to the table. So yeah, it's a little bit of marketing, but it's also
nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I've done a little marketing in my time too. So
yes.
No, I appreciate that. And one thing you said up front that I think is key here, there is data gravity. There's no doubt about it, but no longer do you inextricably have to have the data and the compute in the same place. And all these Kubernetes management systems that can potentially disconnect those two is reality. All the reality that I need to see of why it would make sense. And quite frankly, if you can have your cake and eat it too, having your data in one place, or even the reality is multiple places, but to be able to access it and gain value out of it, which at the end of the day is what the game is all about, then I think that value proposition is super strong.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, look, your data may in fact be federated. It may be in a bunch of different places, but you need to access it, be able to search for it, be able to find it, be able to report on it as if it was all in one place. So where it is physically and where it is sort of logically is very different from where it may be from an end user's point of view, where it all feels like it's one nice, neat place and easy to access.
Yeah.
This is where all the horsepower, compute, networking, low latency all becomes super important to work with the software. So like you said, you can access it, tap it, get the insight you need no matter where it is when it's created. Because we all know that part of it isn't even, part of the data we need to be assessing isn't even created yet, right? As we get more and more to near time and real time, and that needs to be able to coexist with the databases and the legacy data so that you're constantly iterating and improving. Mick, I think I said something to you once in a meeting, something about making sense of your data. And I said the sense is a double entendre, right? For every business, it's making sense and making sense. So, I think that's really where you're trying to go here. And I think, you're on a good path. I don't think we can deny that it's going to be competitive, but I don't think you guys ever doubted that for a minute. And you've built a strong reputation. We started this talking about how many of the Fortune 1000, it's most are using your technology in some capacity. And so there's a lot to build on there. As an analyst, it's our job to ask the hard questions though. So, I'm going to wrap this pod up with a more challenging question. I don't think it's one that I think you have an answer to, but migration, right? So you guys are a company that is in that process. You're migrating to recurring revenue. You're migrating to cloud. You're migrating to more consumption and SaaS. But you have a legacy customer base that it's a little bit more like the people that used to buy their own servers and storage and set it all up in their own software. And now they're saying, hey, just move it to the cloud. You guys are and you're balancing that because you don't want to move them too fast. You want it to be just right. So how do you balance that all?
It's a really is a genuinely difficult thing to do, Daniel, and I wouldn't hesitate to say that to anybody. However, there's some really fabulous role models out there, and kind of in the early stages of this, watching what Microsoft did, what Adobe did in their transition to the cloud was really pretty spectacular to watch. If you think about going from buying a $1,000 Photoshop package to subscribing to Creative Cloud, that was a huge transition. More recently and more in our sector, you can think of what's happened with, say, a MongoDB and the way that they've shifted their business towards the cloud over time. Here's the great news for Cloudera in terms of speed and capacity to get this done. The going private was largely about giving us the capability to do that without having to take the scrutiny and the pounding that you might take in the public markets for making that transition, because making the financial transition between subscription revenue and consumption revenue can be a very, very bumpy road. And we get the opportunity to invest in cloud innovation and to make that transition to consumption without having to do that in the public eye, come out the other end of it a substantially more valuable company than we were when we got started in this process. So we've got some good role models, and we feel like there's a great opportunity ahead for us to make Cloudera more important, more relevant than it's ever been, and candidly, just a more valuable company. Full stop.
Yeah, you made a great point, and as I suggested earlier, I did really like the move to going private. We all know it gives you some extended runway. We've seen it done. We've seen what Michael Dell has done in terms of taking something private in order to get it where you want it. And then, of course, you can have a very lucrative move back. And maybe you don't ever move it back. But, we've seen the transitions you mentioned. We're seeing Citrix go through it right now. You're seeing Splunk go through it right now. And, you, of course, mentioned MongoDB. And a lot of these companies are having great growth. And I think that's going to be the thing that you're going to want to keep an eye on, both growth and success and keeping that customer satisfaction high, attrition low. And from what you're saying, there's a lot of reasons to feel really encouraged, Mick. So, I just want to say thank you so much, as always, for joining us here on the 6.5 Insider Podcast. You were always a great guest, and I believe we look forward to seeing you this year at the 6.5 Summit as well.
Looking forward to it. And it may not be in Aspen with you, Patrick, but maybe I got you out to the slopes here in Park City too. So
maybe we can do that in 2023. I don't know. But Mick, have a great holiday. Thanks for a great 2021. It's been a great experience. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff.
Take care. Wow. I love it. It's funny. 10 years ago, when we first started talking about the cloud, I did take a lot of shots in the company for talking about, now I called it a private cloud that would extend to the public cloud. I didn't use the word hybrid, and I may have picked the wrong horse, which was OpenStack, but who didn't pick the wrong horse? But here we are. I mean, now we have every cloud native company doing hybrid cloud solutions. There are no hybrid cloud deniers anymore. There might be people who debate multi-cloud, and we'll debate that for the next 5 years in how that gets done. But we're here, and it's great to see Cloudera taking such a leadership role, basically at the epicenter of it, which is the data. It all starts with the data.
Yeah, it's been a very compelling story. It's one to keep our eyes on. Yeah. I'm sure you and I will be having further conversations with the leadership team there here on 6.5 Insider at the summit. As we, as analysts, we advise most of these companies across the space. So I think we have a really good handle on who's in the space, what type of architecture, design, what's marketing, what's fluff, what's frothy, and what's real. And I think you go down to the base roots of Cloudera, the engineering, the technology, what it's built on, Hadoop and Hortonworks and its legacy. These are proven big data platforms. And so all the big data talk that's done out there is a company that's been doing it for a long time. The challenge of moving to cloud, it's going to be a real challenge. But I do believe the leadership with Mick and the team, I think there's going to be a good future. We're going to keep an eye on it here. And of course, everybody out there, we appreciate you very much for tuning into the 6.5 Podcast Insider Edition.